13. Where there's sky above. Emilia lay under a bench seat in the rear cabin of Terran's hovercraft, with her head resting on a small travel sack. Something in her had snapped at her mother's confession. She'd packed a bag, scratched out a note, and escaped through her bedroom window unseen. With only minutes to spare, she managed to slip into the back of the transport. Now, hours later, laying on the dusty floor of the utilitarian hovercraft, with the smell of oil and metal in her nose, her mother's defense of the order still soured her stomach. Their hold over those who served under them was sickening. When Knox first told her he was laying down his oaths, Emilia attributed it to outdated dogma pressuring him. But the more she learned, the more she wondered. Terran's account had made it feel personal, calculated. The Order wanted to remove anything that could possibly hold more sway over an overseer than their vows. Her mother's confession only served as further confirmation. They leveraged body and soul to control hearts and minds. This is the true nature of the Order. Her jaw clenched in muted anger, and she imagined confronting the elders, charging them as complicit in Knox's death. The facts would condemn them. Knox never failed the sky in word or action. They stole his gift, even as he continued to serve, sacrificing his own life. Emilia's breath caught, and she clamped her thoughts down like a tourniquet. Think of something else. Not that. She'd seen fear in her mother's eyes and an edge of worry gnawing at Terran. Neither would admit to distrusting the Order, but they both felt it in their gut that something was off in the Reaches. If they weren't free to find the answers, blinded by their oaths as they were, she would. With such thoughts swirling in the steady hum of the vehicle, exhaustion pulled her back into sleep. Stones, are you kidding me, Em? What are you doing here? Emilia opened bleary eyes to Terran's silhouette filling the cabin's back door. She pushed out from under the bench, stiff from sleeping on the hard floor. Her stomach cramped, and she cringed as he held out a hand to her. I couldn't stay. The rest of her sentence was cut off as he pulled her forward and she was crushed against his chest in a bear hug. Her feet found the ground a few moments later as he released her with a shake of his head. I should have known you'd find a way. You rode in the back this whole time? She straightened. Well, I didn't fly in halfway. A relieved smile broke across his face at the sarcasm. You okay? She stretched carefully and groaned. I will be. Where are we? She looked around at their surroundings in the dusky light. They were stopped on a rocky knoll with a few scraggly trees that spotted an area not much larger than their craft. Low, stilted buildings sat in irregular patterns down below them in a wide valley, but none were lit with the soft glow of artificial light. Outside of Aris. Emilia's eyes caught on a crackling fire and a small cook station set up. The transport he'd commandeered for the trip was slightly larger than the courier craft used in the cluster. It had storage built into the exterior as well as the back cab where she'd hidden. How long have we been stopped? Not long. She rubbed at her face and gathered her hair, pulling it back into a loose braid. Are we going farther tonight? She asked, trying to hide the fatigue she felt. For having slept, she felt no better for it. Terran eyed her and opened a side panel on the cab. No. I was going to make myself something to eat and then crash. I didn't get any sleep last night, and not much the night before. I'm starting to feel a little thin. Emilia took in his familiar features. His amber eyes under heavy brows still flashed with strength, but gray rings betrayed the truth. He was pulling on his power to stay awake. Stubble was turning into a short beard. Time marched over grief with quick strides. I'm not the only one trying to keep up appearances. How long are you going to keep this? She asked, and teasingly poked at his cheek. I've never seen you with so much as a shadow before you got fed up with it. He gave a listless shrug, and pulled some more gear from a side panel in the craft. I don't know. It feels right, somehow. A way to remember. He trailed off, and they both grew silent. Knox's short beard was easily a defining feature. Terran fidgeted uncomfortably with the clasp on the bag he held. I like it. She forced the smile to touch her eyes and moved to help free the stuck buckle. The buckle popped open under her touch. He gave her a half-hearted smile. I know it's an empty gesture, but I needed something to keep him close. She pressed her lips tight and nodded, not trusting her voice. Terran turned with a cough and shifted the conversation. He pulled out another collapsible stool and dropped it before the fire. You sit, and I'll make you dinner. Emilia didn't have it in her to argue. She moved to the fire's gentle warmth and sat. Once the lentils were warming over the fire, his amber eyes found hers. What are you doing here, Em? She looked towards the night sky. The brightest stars peeked through thin clouds, sparking chirps from dusk beetles. I couldn't sit there with my mother hovering over me with that worried expression for a moment longer. He accepted the explanation without comment and dished her up a small bowl of the spiced beans. They ate together in an easy silence. Once the meal was cleaned up, Terran handed her some bedding and pulled out a second set and threw it on the roof of the hovercraft. With an easy leap, he followed. Emilia gave him a confused look. I can keep an eye on things from up here. You can sleep in the cab. A twinge of guilt gave an uncomfortable pinch as she watched him unroll his bed. She hadn't even considered the inconvenience her presence would cause. Terran didn't even have the decency to act annoyed. She opened the back and made up her own bed before returning to the fire. Will the order help? Of course they will, he said too quickly. Terran, honestly. He dropped to the ground and joined her at the fire before letting out a long breath. I know they can. I'm worried if they will. We have evidence of a threat to the Reaches, but whether it is seen as a threat to the Mercurial remains to be seen. So much for the Order protecting the innocent. Terran frowned. Protecting the innocent is our responsibility as overseers. Protecting the Mercurial is the responsibility of the Elders. We have different vows. I didn't know that. He pursed his lips, gave her an apologetic look. I shouldn't have said anything. I always say too much around you. A familiar knot of disappointment lodged in Emilia's throat. Secrets upon secrets surrounded her. My mother was an overseer. Terran looked up, surprised. Maven? Emilia couldn't help but laugh. No, my other mother. Terran didn't seem as amused by her joke. She told you this? Right before I left, Emilia sighed. I think she was trying to help me understand what Nox went through, but all I could think was that she's been lying to me all this time. And I climbed out a window like a child. His brow creased, worried. What did she say, exactly? Exactly, nothing. She wouldn't say anything outright. She left it to me to fill in the blanks. She didn't tell you anything she shouldn't have? His voice was low but earnest. She frowned and thought of Maven's response to her questions. I don't think so. She was hesitant. He sucked in a deep breath and looked to the sky, obviously relieved. Good. He turned back to her, looking uncharacteristically serious. Nox warned you about guarding the secrets we hold about the Order, right? Emilia huffed a sigh but nodded. Part of being bound to an overseer was swearing to protect their secrets. Of course, but I don't see what... believe me, we are going to the capital. You cannot breathe a word of your mother. Not of anything you think you know or your opinions on the Order, you understand? Her heart quickened at his intensity. This serious version of Terran was hard to reconcile with the light-hearted man she knew. Okay, she said. "But why? It's dangerous. The capital is not like the Reaches. The Order will expect you to have some knowledge because of your bond with Nox, but it's safer if you feign ignorance as much as possible." Annoyance flared, and Amelia narrowed her eyes. "How am I supposed to know what's allowed if you don't tell me?" "Assume you are allowed to know nothing." She crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous. I'm not going to pretend to be some oblivious sycophant." He pressed his head into his hands. "Oh, skies, Em, you can't talk like that. Nox would wring my soul if anything happens to you." He looked back up at her with a face drawn into a pleading expression. "You have to understand how the Order works. Oaths leave little room for mercy." "I know how the Order works." "No, you don't." His jaw flexed as he searched for the words. "The most lenient, gracious punishment the Order doles out for failing to uphold oaths is what Nox experienced. Humiliation, expulsion, and stripping an overseer of all strength. This is mercy." Clearly, he hoped to scare her, but his words only served to infuriate her further. The Order could take their magnanimity and shove it up their overly rigid hindquarters. "I will not go to the Elders playing the fool." Terran's face paled. "The Elders? Amelia, you can't. You have to be oath-bound for an audience with them." "I am oath-bound to Nox." "No, you were. You were released from your oaths when Nox died." The thought snagged. She felt anything but released from her bond to Nox. "How am I supposed to petition for Nox to join the Hall of the Fallen without an audience?" Terran's jaw went slack. "The Hall of the Fallen." He pressed his lips together into a firm line and considered her for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was low. "That is an honor reserved for overseers who fall in battle." "I know what it is," she spat. "And you know as much as I do Nox deserves it, and more. They need to acknowledge that he never stopped serving the sky." A quaver rocked her voice. "That even though they stripped Nox of all his strength, that he'd lived and died with honor." Terran swallowed hard and spoke barely above a whisper. "They didn't take his strength, Em. He gave it up, willingly. In the Order's eyes, laying down one's oaths is laying down one's honor." Her voice hardened. "That's where we need to convince them that they are wrong." Terran shifted uncomfortably in his seat and avoided meeting her gaze. "The Elders will not see it the same way." The words cut into her as sure as if she were walking across glass. "It's their fault he's dead, Terran. They blackmailed him into giving up his power. I don't care how they frame it. You have to see the truth. They owe him this." His expression darkened, heavy brows dropping low and eyes narrowing. He lifted dark amber eyes to hers, the firelight turning them to liquid gold, mouth pressed tight. She didn't care if the truth offended his precious vows. She needed him to see, needed him to acknowledge the truth of Nox's demise. They humiliated him in every way possible because he got in the way of their politics, but I won't let them dishonor his memory. Terran's warm complexion turned gray. "Won't let them." He rubbed his palms over his knees, making a decision. "You can't come to the capital. You can stay here in Arras and catch a ride home when they bring Alex back." Amelia stood, heat filling her. "You are not leaving me behind, Terran. Do you hear me?" He shook his head. "If I bring you and you say even one of those things, you will never make it out." The blunt words struck her. "What do you mean?" Anger flashed, and he stood, voice rising. "You are not of the Order, nor oath-bound. If you come into the capital spouting any of this, you will be silenced with prison, or worse. You have no covering." Amelia fought to keep the words from cowing her, pulling back her shoulders defiantly. All of Nox's vague warnings and his hesitancy to bring her to the capital suddenly made sense. Grief and fear warred against the burning anger. "I am not being bowed like every other soul." She claimed the rage and staked herself to it. "Oath-bound or not, I will speak to the Elders. I will claw my way into the temple itself if I have to. Nothing, not you or anyone else, is going to stop me, Terran. He stared at her, dumbstruck, his own anger of moments earlier drained by shock. "Oh, skies," he whispered, dropping back into his seat next to her. He rubbed his face in his hands before turning a pleading gaze in her direction. "Let me go to the Order on my own, Emilia. I promise I will petition for Nox and ensure the whole conclave knows the truth, but please, you can't." The brokenness in his voice softened the edges of her own resolve. "No!" Shame washed over her in a hot wave. "And once again, I'll wait on the sidelines for someone else to do what I should." She reached for his hand, gripping it in her own, willing him to understand. There was something bigger than either of their grief driving her. "I have to do this. You owe me nothing, Terran. I don't expect you to stand against them. Just let me travel with you." "Damnable Earth!" he cursed, and to her surprise let out a huffed chuckle. "Forces that make us their own." Nox wasn't lying, was he? "What are you talking about?" He shook his head. "Nothing." He slid from his seat and dropped down to his knees in front of her. He reached forward and gently pulled her hands from her lap and clasped them both between his larger ones. When he spoke next, his voice was subdued. "I can't lose you, Em. Not now, not ever. I'm not staying, Terran. I'm not asking you to." She stopped and stared at him as he cleared his throat, a determined expression stealing his features. "I won't lose you. Not when I can prevent it," he whispered. The sharp shadows made the fire's reflection blaze all the brighter in his eyes. His jaw flexed and brow furrowed in concern. "If there was a way to help you, I would." And just like that, the solution presented itself to her with stunning clarity. She straightened. "Do you trust me?" He raised an eyebrow at the sudden shift, but dipped his head in a single nod. "You know I do." "Can I do this?" She only needed the courage. "For Nox. Be my bond. Exchange oaths with me." The words echoed in her ears as if someone else had spoken them. "I will be oath-bound to satisfy the elders, and as soon as we are clear of the capital, we can renounce the oath." Terran stared at her, horrified. "It's only been days." She rushed on. "I would hold no obligation over you whatsoever. You will owe me no allegiance beyond the words themselves. It's not as if we will be truly bound." Emilia could trace each thought and counter-argument as it passed over his features, looking for all the world like someone caught in a winding gear and slowly being torn apart. Her own heart lurched and darted away from the prospect like a trapped wild animal, a sickening dread pulling at her. "This is the only way. Please, Terran, I cannot do this without you." Her words roused him, and she could see he too was warring within himself. "Emilia, vows work in unpredictable ways. They are tethered by intent, and cannot be taken only to be tossed aside at the next turn. They are power." She cut him off. "I have taken the vows before. I understand how they work." He swallowed hard. "But when you took them last, you meant them. The bond they reinforced was sincere." "I'm sincere now," she argued. "I will go to the capital, and if this is the only way to speak with the elders, then I am completely committed." The rush of adrenaline accompanying the words made her feel almost manic. He rubbed at his forehead, clearly distressed. "Do you hear yourself? You're asking me to be bonded to you. You're Nox's wife." Tight lines pressed around his mouth, and his voice cracked. "We can't do this." A sob broke through the wall of resolve, and Terran's eyes widened and his expression dropped, turning worried. "This is for Nox. I know it's a risk, but it's a cost I'm willing to pay. For him." He dropped his chin and met her gaze, holding it with an intensity she'd never experienced from him. "I need to know this is not a suicide mission. Promise me you are not going to purposefully antagonize the Order." She suppressed a grimace. Am I? She was willing to go that far, but to condemn Terran with her? Never. They'd both been robbed of their Wayfinder, and if the only way forward was together, she'd guard him as her own. She let the tension drop from her shoulders and nodded. I promise. Terran let out a shaky breath. Okay. We will do this. But carefully. Follow my wording as much as you can. A forced smile wobbled uncertainly. Emilia dropped from the stool to her knees, matching his posture, so they knelt across from one another. His deep voice turned rough as he spoke the words. I, Terran, do vow to you, Emilia, before the sky, to honor this holy oath. I vow to protect you with my body and honor you with my soul, for as long as you will have me. She forced herself to hold his gaze as he continued. I promise to give you all I have to give, and accept from you all that you have to offer. Do you accept my vow? Ignoring the wailing shriek tearing at her soul, Emilia nodded. I do. She echoed the vow back to him. The intensity shocked her. They were lifelong friends, not lovers, yet she felt her words ring true to her own ears. I do, he said, accepting the vow. She moved to stand, her only thought to escape, but his hands held hers tight a moment longer, continuing. And I promise to cover you no matter what force comes against you, whether sky above or earth below. The words stole her breath, and she sat back, stunned. Did he promise to protect me from the Order? She looked at him, wide-eyed. He gave her a sad, half-formed grin, as if he hadn't laid something precious at her feet. Nox would have given his life for you. I will not offer any less. Terran kept his eyes on their hands, looking as numb as she felt. She reached a hand to his stubbled jaw, and he lifted his eyes to hers, glassy with emotion. She leaned forward and kissed him on the cheek, his new beard prickly against her lips. Thank you, she said, before she pulled back. We'll find our way, Em. She nodded and stood. It wasn't until she was in the back of the transport and tucked into her makeshift bed that the full scope of what they'd just done struck her. Racking sobs shook her until exhaustion released her into sleep.